Pitfalls. Колеги, хочу вам представити Пітера. Коли ми почали впровадження Міністерства цифрової трансформації, у нас був контакт з британським урядом. Навіть зараз у нас є спеціальна група в Slack, меседжері Slack з урядом Британії. І нам представили Пітера як головного методолога уряду Британії і служби цифровізації Британії з питань ОКР. Бо Британія є першою країною з 16-го року стала, яка на рівні уряду почала працювати з ОКР. Зараз уряд Каліфорнії, Сінгапуру, інших країн працює, але Пітер був перший, хто приніс ОКРи в державне управління. Він поділився з нами базою знань, яку він напрацював для урядування, для урядових ОКР. Ми поділилися з вами, з представниками інших державних організацій цією базою знань. Але найцінніше, що зробив Пітер для України, ми всі постійно в комунікації з усіма, хто практикує управління по цілям, це згадуємо. Він є автором такого тригера, ну принаймні для мене і для всієї спільноти, ОКР-спільноти України, слово і практики тригера OKR Фестиваль. Тому що ми перетворили тут практику OKR Фестиваль, Пітер, на дуже людоцентричну. Як відбуваються OKR Фестивалі в організаціях, з якими ми працюємо, це коли керівник організації, навіть якщо це міністр, його заступник і вся команда департаменту, ми про залучення 100% працівників відповідного напрямку до цілепокладання збираються спільно, обговорюють цілі відповідного напрямку. І тому OKR-фестивалі в окремих українських міністерствах вони можуть тривати навіть тиждень. І це створює неймовірну узгодженість команд і веде до неймовірних багатократних результатів. Тому надзвичайно дякуємо тобі, Пітер. Ти нас дуже надихаєш, твоя робота, твоя методологія, ті ідеї, які ти запропонував. І розкажи нам, як ти прийшов до ОКР, як британський уряд прийшов до ОКР. І я впевнений абсолютно, що ми можемо створити синергію Британії як найближчого союзника України не тільки в військовій сфері, але з точки зору управління, тому що Британія відома високими стандартами управлінської культури. Ми віримо, що всі успіхи – це в першу чергу успіхи того, як ми створюємо цілі і як їх досягаємо.
Amazing. Wow. Well, thank you, Alexander, for that. I got most of the transcription, I think. So thank you for the kind words. I hope you didn't give me too much credit. I don't know if I invented the OKR Festival, but certainly we've done a lot of work with it in the UK government, and I'm really pleased to hear how much you've done. It's really impressive. I think next I'd like to have a talk from you about the work you've done in Ukraine, because I think you've probably passed what we're doing with OKRs, certainly. So thank you for that. Okay, I think maybe what I'll do, I'll see if I can share my screen now. Let's try that. And I'm going to try to put everyone's face somewhere where I can still see all of you, because I'll put you down here on a different screen. Okay, I'm going to share now, and let's see if this works. I have to send a request to share my screen, it says. So hopefully that will go to someone who can answer that. And then I will try again. Let's see. Yes, good. Okay. Thank you very much. And I will share my screen. Okay. Good. Everything looking okay? Give me a quick thumbs up if that's all right. Or a heart is even better. Good. Okay. So, Привет, thank you. Hello. I'm sorry I'm going to have to do this in English mostly. My name is Peter Kappus. I've already been given a wonderful introduction by Alexander, but I'm very happy for you to connect with me on LinkedIn or come to my website or anything else that you find helpful. It's nice to hear from people. So, I've had the privilege over the last 10, 15 years now to do this work with a lot of organizations. That makes me feel old, but it will be worse when I start talking about introducing OKRs the first time. So I won't talk too much about me. You can learn more later at my website. I do want to say a huge thank you. I've already said this, but I'm so inspired by everything that you all are doing, the way that you are coming together to really create a much better, stronger, more just, equitable country in the middle of a lot of challenge, a lot of complexity, as we heard earlier. So it's really inspiring to hear what you're doing and to be in contact with you. So I really appreciate that. And thank you, Alexander and Anna and Vlad and the team for bringing me in today. So So thank you. So speaking of today, what I would love to do here is just offer, I have a few questions for you first, actually, just to kind of find out how you're using OKRs and maybe what you'd like from today to make this time as valuable as possible. And then I thought I might offer a few reflections on my own OKR journey, as Alexander said, about how I came to OKRs and especially bringing them through government. And then we'll have some time at the end for a bit of a Q&A. So I hope that sounds okay. So first of all, a couple of questions. These are very easy. You don't even have to type because I wasn't sure how difficult or easy that would be. But could you please put your hand up if the following statements are true for you? So I'm going to make this screen a little bigger just to see how many hands we have going up. And you can turn your camera on if you like with your actual hand, or you can use the Zoom feature to put up a hand. So please let me know. Yes, Anna's demonstrating. Thank you. If you have heard of OKRs, this is a trick question here. I'm expecting to see all the hands going up. Very good. Okay. We can see who's listening too this way. Very good. Okay. What about if you currently have some OKRs? So you can put your hand down, but oh, sorry, no. If you're working in the public service or in government, that's the next question. I'm wondering how much of this group is currently working with government, maybe in the public service or contracting. So not everybody, but that's okay. Okay. Very good. All right. Thank you. Do you have OKRs today? Please raise your hand if that is the case for you. Again, okay, a few people. Good. Have you checked in on your OKRs this month? Are you doing those check-ins? Those are the most important part. Alexander's got it. Very good. Okay, not as many people, not quite as many. That's okay. Okay, both Alexanders are checking in. Have you attended an OKR festival? Done one of those, maybe. Okay, a few people, not everyone. That's all right. And everyone who's never heard of OKRs, that's okay as well. It's okay. You're in the right place. A few people. Okay. All right. That's fine. Thank you very much for being here. We can go into some of the basics and some of the techniques about OKRs if that's valuable. The main thing I wanted to reflect on today is my own sort of journey with OKRs and bringing those into the public sector. So I'm going to try to just speak at a reasonable pace. I hope the translation is working okay for everyone. Hopefully, Alexander told you how to turn that on. If you do have questions during the talk, you can raise your hand and we can go into more detail. If you would like to type a question in the chat, me and Anna and the team can keep an eye on the questions there as well, and we can come back and answer them during the talk, or as I mentioned, we will have more time at the end for Q&A to talk about things. So I'll just give you a little bit of background about me generally and how I ended up getting into the world of OKRs. I've always enjoyed engineering. I love building things. Since I was a small child, I've always loved kind of putting things together to see what we can build and how we can use technology for to bring people together to make life easier and better. And at some point, after doing a lot of engineering on my own, building a lot of web applications and tools and just fun stuff, I realized I could do a lot more with a team than I could do by myself, right? That having a great team that works well together is ultimately much more powerful than having a really strong individual. It's great if you can have both,
Yeah,
but
Peter,
you need both.
Peter,
Yeah,
sorry to interrupt you.
that's okay.
Please speak slowly because Zoom is not so quick as I and you.
Okay, very good. Yeah, thank you for telling me.
And it is not possible for Zoom to translate in this
Okay.
quick pace. I am the same as you here.
That's fine. That's good. Thank you. Thank you for telling me so I can slow down a bit.
Time
So
slower.
very good. So I came from a background in engineering, and eventually I moved into working with more teams, and I moved eventually into project, program, portfolio management. That became the place where I did a lot of work in the last 15, 20 years. This also led into agile coaching eventually. After running a lot of difficult projects, some of them that didn't go very well, I thought there must be a better way. And I discovered more agile ways of working in about 2002. So I've been working with agile coaching for many years as well. But generally, I love to work with engineering teams and teams generally to help them to get clear on what they're doing, why are they doing it, how can they improve the way they do it, and how can they add more joy to the process? How can they have a good time while they're delivering as well? So if you go back to 2014, at the time, I was hounding the UK's government digital service. So when I say I was hounding them, the digital service at the time was part of the Cabinet Office. They had four groups. They had digital, data, technology, and operations. They had, I think, 22 teams and about 350 staff members. So it was a largish organization, but not huge by government standards. And they were famously agile. They were doing things in government that were only being done in the private sector. So they were building cross-functional teams that were delivering value to citizens from end to end, building entire services. And there was a woman named Emily Weber who later became my boss, and she is today an amazing agile coach and an agile practitioner, organizational change person, transformation person. And she came and gave a talk at another company where I was working. And I was so amazed by this talk and everything she was saying. And the fact that she was from the government just blew my mind. The fact that the government was working in such agile ways, I thought, I need to go here and see how they're doing this and to work with them. So that was the beginning of my sort of love affair with GDS, I guess. So I emailed her relentlessly, as well as Tom Loosemore and a couple of others. And eventually I found a role and a way to kind of get my foot in the door with what was the digital marketplace. So I became a program manager of the digital marketplace, a program delivery manager, as they were called. And you might know the digital marketplace. This is what allowed central government and local governments to start to buy digital goods and services from small and medium enterprises, smaller companies. And it's now done billions of pounds of business through this platform that allows small companies like myself to sell to government to help. And it also increased the quality of what government could buy, and it reduced the cost significantly because they had a lot more choice. So this was a fun project, but then later I moved into a team called Delivery Operations, which was also at GDS, or DelOps for short. This was a really powerful team because they were taking everything that was happening at the team level, all of that agility, and they were trying to lift it up to the level of organizational agility. So they were concerned with a few different key areas, including people, finance, and delivery. So are we recruiting at the right pace in the right areas, in the right roles? Are we spending the right amount of money in the right places at the right time? And are we delivering on the impacts and things that we want to be doing? Now, delivery at the time was still pretty traditional around meeting certain milestones, releasing certain pieces of key functionality in the applications that they were building, the platforms that they were building. But this exercise came along called spending review, and I think probably about every 5 years, the government goes through this spending review cycle. And I notice Anna has a hand up. Is that did you want to jump in now, or is that from before?
No.
No,
Yeah, Peter, can I ask you to check if you choose subtitle English and English, because we see that translation is really it's not correct.
Not good. Okay. I've just gone to the cog and I've said my speaking language is English. Is this any improvement? Any better?
English and English should be two options.
Yes, my caption language is also English. But for each of you, you could say my caption language is Ukrainian. See if that helps. What are your settings now, Anna?
I saw that it's better.
Is it better if I keep speaking?
Yeah.
Now it shows.
We're getting good translations? Okay.
Yeah. Thank you. Sorry.
That's okay. Thank you for, yeah, if anything else happens like this, just let me know. Because this is the first time I'm doing this with live translation, so that's exciting. Thank you. So every 5 years, roughly, the government would go through this spending review process where the entire government, every department has to go out and say, this is what we want to achieve, this is how much money we need, this is how these kinds of things. Oh, sorry, Alexander, can I mute you? Thank you.
Sorry.
No worries. So it's a very big, very complex exercise, and it takes a long time. Every department has to go through this. All the teams need to go through this, and so it's a big form of business planning that makes this happen. Fortunately, and I'll be honest, I was nervous about this. I didn't know how we were going to handle it. Business planning is something nobody enjoys, and we didn't have a lot of time to do it. But I was very lucky. I had two sort of angels come in with good timing. I had two good teachers, and they were Felipe Castro and Christina Watke. So one day I was, I think, on Twitter or something, and I saw a post by Felipe Castro introducing OKRs. And in the same week, I think, I saw something from Christina Watke from her blog, Elegant Hack. And I read everything I could from Christina Watke. She has an amazing book that she's done a couple of editions of now called Radical Focus that I always recommend. And I just had this sort of light bulb moment of, aha, this is a tool that we can use to have a different kind of conversation with each other in our teams, and a different kind of conversation with Cabinet Office, and a different kind of conversation with the rest of government about what we are trying to do and how we will measure the impact of what we are trying to do. So in order to try out OKRs, I didn't go to my team. I did not go and say, we must use OKRs. I said, let me try them for myself. So I set some personal OKRs that I would use. By the way, is the translation still okay? It's good enough? Okay, good. So these were my first set of OKRs that I ever created. This was at a time when I had just moved to a new apartment. I had a small baby at home. Life was complex. And so I tried setting some OKRs, and I talked about them with my wife. We did some check-ins, and I realized, yeah, these are good. These are very helpful. It was a way to have a less emotional conversation about what's going on and to be more intentional and more clear about the specific kinds of outcomes we wanted to see and how we were going to measure whether things were getting better. So I told my team about this, and I invited them to have a look at OKRs and try them out. Now, thankfully, because of the organization where I was, the best thing about GDS has always been the culture, I think, and the fact that people are really willing to try things and willing to experiment and willing to not know and to be wrong. And to not be an expert initially. I'll talk more about that later. But so we tried them and we liked them. We had a little session and we kind of fumbled our way through, and we thought, OKRs can work for us as a team. And so then we went out and we invited other teams to use OKRs for their own business planning for the spending review. Now, it didn't happen immediately. We had to facilitate a lot of training, a lot of OKR drafting workshops. And again, we were very honest and open with them. We said, look, this is something that's brand new for us. We've never used it before. We think it has the potential to give us a different way to talk about our work and to talk to each other and to make decisions. Can we try it out together? And I was delighted that many of them said yes. A few of them said, we don't know if we have time for this, but most of our colleagues stepped in, and we also had this sort of community that was born. I initially approached the Agile delivery community, which was a really important part of the organization that already existed. And within that community, we had a smaller kind of sub-community of OKR enthusiasts. But the community was born. And eventually, most of the teams did set OKRs as part of their business planning. So we gave them spreadsheets where they could put in, who are the people that you need, what roles, how much money are you going to spend in the next financial year? And actually, we were looking at multiple years, and what kinds of outcomes are you hoping to deliver? So the result was that we were able to complete the business planning in time, and we received 450 million pounds in the settlement. It was a very large settlement. I think we got everything we asked for at GDS, which was amazing. But more importantly, now we had this set of OKRs. We had recruitment numbers, we had finance numbers, And so then it was time for us to deliver, right? So when we got into delivery mode, we had a different sort of slightly different conversation. We said, okay, how are we going to use the OKRs to help us to make decisions around delivery? So we designed a whole portfolio governance around OKRs. And I think this is really the most important part of making OKRs stick and making them work. But it's very difficult, and I'm going to show you all the times how I failed. So you'll remember that this group was looking at people and finance and delivery. So when we talk about number 3 there, about delivery, that's where the check-ins become very important, right? So this is where we introduced the idea of the fist to 5, you know, doing the confidence vote. How confident are we as a team that we will achieve this objective? And I won't talk too much about the exact technique of this because it's pretty well known now, but you can ask, we can talk about it later. But finding out why you are confident or less confident that you will deliver this, what do you as a team believe is true? What are you going to do as a result of these beliefs that you have, right? What is next? And finally, keeping that really open, really transparent, and sharing that with your whole organization and people outside the organization, anybody who needs to know and who might be able to help you to deliver. We share those check-in information. Now, there were multiple levels of check-ins happening, right? We would meet weekly as teams, and then fortnightly, so every 2 weeks, the teams would share their check-in information with their deputy directors, one level above them. And then we would have, whoops, sorry, I'm drawing on my screen here. And then we would go up to the directors every month. And they would have that conversation. So what this looks like in practice, right? We have the team levels, that would be rolling up to deputy directors and finally up to the directors. I'm just going to see, I wonder if I can delete my notation. No, that's okay. There's something going on with Google Slides, but it's okay. So, but remember that all of this data is actually public. So it's not just flowing in one direction. The data is also flowing horizontally across teams, and it can also flow outward, right? We can use this to communicate even more broadly outside of the teams. So this meant that OKRs could become a common language for us, right? They could become a way for having conversations across teams where you don't need all of the domain expertise. You don't have to understand and be an expert in that team's work in order to understand the benefit that that team is delivering, and in order to make sense of the budget that they have been given and the people that they have to work with that team. Oh, I see. Yeah, sorry, we're getting some lines coming across the screen here. I don't know if I can turn that off, but I'll keep going. So this is how we did this. We did these monthly check-ins. This was the really critical piece on top of that. So we talked about money, we talked about people, we talked about delivery through the language of OKRs. And this became a monthly kind of conversation between the top of each department and the operations team. So in order to make all this work, of course, in order to bring these 3 things together, money, people, and delivery, we had to do a lot of work on recruitment and vacancies. We had to look at every team and figure out who they need and how much that's going to cost, what the money looks like. We had to figure out the finance so that at the end of the month, instead of taking a month to get our actuals and see how much we actually spent, we could get that data in days, sometimes even hours. So we did a lot of work with Google Sheets, a lot of work on the data models, a lot of work on the cost centers, and making sure that the financial accounting was very closely mapped to the way we were actually delivering. So that became an important thing for us as well. We built a lot of our own tools, and that was important because it meant that we could manage things exactly the way we wanted to. We built tools using Ruby on Rails. We built a lot of tools using Google Sheets, and so that was helpful. And this worked for a while. So we had the teams doing their check-ins. We had everything coming up to the top. We had teams talking to each other. We were setting quarterly OKRs and using this as a way to have these conversations. And it got a lot easier.
Да?
Oh, sorry, someone's
Да, я вже
Владислав,
sorry,
виключи
can you mute
мікрофон,
everyone who's not in the call. There we go. Thank you. And I'm wondering if I can, I don't know if it's possible to, maybe I can share again. That's good. Just going to pop back over here. No, the lines are still there. Okay, well, we'll keep going. So it worked for a while, but then I switched roles, and then I went to the BBC. So I got a call from the BBC who said, we're interested in OKRs, and I really, when the BBC calls, you don't turn them down. So I was very excited to go over to the BBC, and I'll talk about that in a moment. But meanwhile, back at GDS, we got less executive sponsorship. We lost some of that momentum. New people came in, people left. Some of those skills became lost, and OKRs became less used. They rebranded them to missions and outcomes, and it didn't have quite the same sort of gravity to it. And I don't think that was due to me. I think that was just that we didn't have enough momentum before I left. It needed a person who was going to consistently push on those from the top. Now, meanwhile, at the BBC, I said, okay, great. I have a new challenge. So I have 25 more teams, another 4 groups, including iPlayer, which was very exciting, their video on demand tool. And I'll slow down a little bit because I'm getting too excited. But we did a lot of facilitation. We did a lot of evangelism. We did a lot of training, and we did a lot of socializing. So we ran many workshops. We recorded videos. We shared everyone's OKRs everywhere. We started drafting them all in the open in one place. That's where we started that kind of technique. And that's also where we introduced the idea of the OKR Festival. The BBC loves a good festival. They love a good concert, a good show. So this was very familiar to them, right? They were very happy with the metaphor of, oh, I see. It's like you have a lot of stages, you have different bands, you can go and see who you want to talk to. And it created a really nice kind of environment. Yeah, I give that some hearts. And what was wonderful too is it didn't take very much for me to introduce this. It was mostly them. They said, oh yeah, it's kind of like being at a festival. We just share our OKRs, we talk to each other. So that also changed the dynamic a little bit, because before this point, OKRs were mostly about what was happening in teams for me. And the OKR Festival really opened it up into a much more inclusive, much more collaborative kind of exercise. So I was very happy to see that taking shape. And also really important is the way that the teams adapted their own agile rituals to leverage and use OKRs. And what I mean is initially there was some question, there was a little discomfort because teams were saying, well, okay, we already have these agile ceremonies that we do. Now you want to do OKRs. We only have so much time, the usual sort of pushback, which I think is justified. But what a lot of teams did, for example, is they started to blend their check-ins with their sprint planning or their retrospectives. So they found ways to use the check-ins to inform what they do next, which is exactly what they are designed to do. So I was very happy to see that. And again, this worked for a while. We had all the teams adopting OKRs. We were reporting on them. We had more custom tooling, a lot of spreadsheets and different things that worked quite well. But again, I left. So that role finished, and I moved on to another place I'll talk about in a moment. But it meant that the sponsorship and the understanding started to diminish. There was less of a push from the top to do it. It's very difficult to set OKRs at the top of an organization. We could have a whole conversation about this, but often the top of the organization is really just a lot of functions coming together, and they don't always work as a cross-functional team delivering a single set of outcomes. They're delivering lots of things across their functions. So it was difficult, I think, at the top in the BBC as well to do this. So, and I should say, everyone still was making tremendous efforts and doing their best, and and a lot of teams still, I think, to this day find them useful. But again, this was many years ago, and so I had moved on to another role. I went to a couple of different banks, got involved with biotech, fintechs, AI obviously was taking off, lots of different things happening, and I was still mostly centered around OKRs. But also ways of working and transformation and these things. But what I did notice is those same themes starting to come up again and again. And then now, 10 years later, this was just a few years ago, I think around 2024, I got a call from someone I had worked with after the BBC, and he said, "We would like to roll out OKRs at GDS." And I said, "Oh, that's very interesting because did you know that I introduced OKRs at GDS 10 years ago, or they were introduced when I was there?" And he said, "Oh, really?" So it was interesting to see how much they had changed from when I started, and there was a little bit of some teams still using them, but mostly it was gone. So this was a new GDS now with 40 plus teams, 20 directorates, 5 sub-organizations, and about 1,600 people, I think. So it was shortly after the last election when GDS had been moved into a new department and merged with a number of other organizations. So it was a much bigger organization, more complex, more work to be done there. And so what we did is we had myself and 2 internal trainers, and we led dozens of workshops. We helped teams to do the 4 essential disciplines of setting, aligning, checking in on those OKRs, and closing those OKRs. We did that again and again with team after team. But we also started this community of practice, and we really codified it and tried to make it as official as possible. We were meeting every couple of weeks. We were discussing things that were going well, things where we were having big challenges. We started to, again, develop our own tools using a lot of Google Sheets, a lot of Google application script, building custom front ends with Vue.js and proper HTML and CSS that looked quite nice. But again, there wasn't a proper team to maintain them, and but we also made our own reference materials. So we made our own training materials and videos that could be used to train more people and keep this going. And again, it worked for a while. And when that engagement finished, a new leader came in, and or a few new leaders who were less familiar with OKRs. It's not that they didn't like OKRs; they just didn't know how to use them and how to put them at the core of their decision-making process. And I wasn't there to explain and to kind of bring them on that journey as well. And unfortunately, this is where I think we just needed a bit more time and a bit more. We needed to have probably some more decisions that were written down and memorialized, say, this is how we do things, because again, it kind of fell away. So the OKRs became sort of fragmented, and they moved into little pockets of the organization where people are still using them today, but in other places they are not. So what have we learned through these different, I don't think I should call them failures, because I think that's the message I do want to give you is that, it does take a lot of time to get these things going, and it doesn't have to be perfect in order to be beneficial. So keep working at that. But some of the common challenges that have come up again and again is this idea of inconsistent sponsorship, right? We really need our leaders to see the value of OKRs and to rely on them. So if you are a senior leader, a way you can make OKRs work is make them the center of every conversation. When you go to a team, instead of saying, have you finished this project? You can say, are your OKRs on track? Is this project going to deliver the outcome that you said it would? So think in terms of outcomes and in terms of impact. It also led to limited team ownership, often immature or invisible portfolio governance. If you don't have a centralized way to manage your portfolio that includes OKRs, or even better, that is enabled by OKRs, then this becomes very difficult. Inconsistent understanding, which often comes from a lack of training and a lack of a community that really ties things together, and just not having the access to those facilitation techniques and experience. So again, that's where the community is really critical, this community of practice. There are also certain organizational prerequisites you need, like curiosity, psychological safety, bravery. And I mean bravery in the sense of not sort of coming in and like trying to get your way, which is not really bravery at all. That's just brute force. But to be brave enough to say, I wonder if this would work. I wonder if we can try this. And to say, ooh, you know, that didn't work, but maybe this will work. So being willing to experiment and being very transparent and open about how you're doing things. And from what I hear, you're all experts at this. So keep that up. You need to be quite data driven and outcome focused. You need to have real contact with your customers so that they can tell you immediately what's working and what's not working. And then very important is this notion of cross-functional end-to-end agile teams, to be honest. They don't have to be technology teams, but you need a team that kind of owns the entire product or the entire service from start to finish. Because otherwise, if they have many dependencies outside of the team, then their OKRs are not really their own. They have to negotiate everything everywhere and connect, and you have lots of dependencies, and it's very difficult. But the good news is that has nothing to do with OKRs. That's something that you can kind of engineer or build into the organization through your operating model, and then you can introduce OKRs on top of that. So for teams, you already know this advice, so I'll cover it quite quickly. 1 or 2 objectives max. You don't want 100. You want maybe 2 to 4 key results, maybe just 1. But again, you don't want a lot of variables because it's a bit like a scientific experiment. You want to really have clarity around what's changing when you do things. I like to give every key result a number. You can flex on that a little bit, but I think if it's not measurable, it's not as powerful of a conversation. I like to separate the OKRs from the work that you're doing. So the OKRs are where you want to end up. The work is how you're going to end up there, right? You need both. You need the OKRs are the flag on top of the hill, and the work is the path that you will take to get you to the top of the hill. But make sure that you treat those differently. You have to do your check-ins. That's how you make adjustments. We know that. I like the fist to 5 confidence votes where we go around the room and we vote on how we feel. We can talk more about that later if we want. But asking for help when you need it is really important, and being transparent. So being very open with your colleagues, people inside the organization, maybe outside, when you're writing, refining, and delivering those OKRs. But this is all kind of basic stuff that you probably know. But if you're an OKR coach in an organization, here's some other things to think about. Start small. You know, it was really helpful that I started by myself. I didn't need any permission to adopt OKRs personally. And then you can grow a little bit. You know, find the teams that want to work with you, that want OKRs, that want the benefits of OKRs, and encourage and invite them to come in, but don't push, don't force them to use them if you can. You have to push a little bit as you go on, but in the beginning, it's very important to find those early champions. Make sure that you're using evidence, asking for evidence, showing the power of having evidence. We want to celebrate honesty, clarity, and transparency wherever we can. You know, even if it's not a positive message, we want to say, okay, thank you for letting us know. We want to keep those OKRs highly visible and celebrate those check-ins, right? We want that sort of positive peer pressure that says, okay, all these other teams have done their check-ins this week, or they've published their early draft OKRs. Good job. And hopefully the ones who are kind of falling behind will eventually come along. And try to have fun with it is the other thing, you know, especially when things are stressful, when things are difficult, and you know a lot about that right now. You know, you really want to you know, find a way to keep things interesting, to keep it fresh, to keep some energy in the process. That's really critical. And again, I think you're probably doing a great job of that already. You must be. And the final thing is that leaders really have to drive with OKRs. So what I mean by that, if I go into how you work with leaders, there are some questions that I like to ask. You know, how does this organization learn? Because OKRs are actually a learning framework. We'll come to that in a moment. But how do you decide as a leader where you're going to invest your time, your energy, your money, your social capital? How do you make those decisions? And what would you like as proof of how things are going? You know, and what is actually true? How do you know that these things are true? There's an American investor named Ray Dalio who talks a lot about, what do you believe is true? Why do you believe it's true? And are you correct or not? So these are good questions to ask them. When you're working with leaders, make sure that they model that good behavior. Make sure they have OKRs. Make sure that they are sharing those OKRs. They're aligning them. They're checking in. They're closing them. They're getting feedback from the wider community. And then critically, when things go wrong, and of course they'll go wrong, I learned this trick from Richard Sheridan, a company called Menlo Innovations, and he trains all of his project managers. When someone comes and says, I have a problem, this is going to be late, or this is harder than I thought it was, or whatever, they are trained to smile and say thank you. When the problem comes, you smile and you say thank you, because that is going to encourage people to be very honest with you, and it shows that appreciation for the communication you have. And then hopefully it actually allows you to offer help in a way that is joyful. And what I mean by that is to be able to come in and say, wow, I'm so lucky as a leader that I have the power and the privilege to come in and help this team out, and to also do it in a way that is flexible, because they might say that's not the right kind of help, or we don't need this sort of help right now, thank you. But also being flexible about your goals, because if a team does everything they can, if they ask for your help, if you still can't achieve that, you have to be very realistic, and you have to say, okay, because this goal is not going to be met, I need to change my own goal. And then I need to communicate. I need to be just as transparent going up the chain of command there, or up the hierarchy. And as always, we celebrate that honesty, the progress that we make, and the difficulties as well. Finally, it's good for leaders to over communicate. So if you think you've said it enough times, say it one more time, say it 5 more times, so that people really get that message. So just almost done here, but I think a few things to remember. OKRs are actually a learning framework. They help teams and organizations to find out, where do you have leverage? Where do you have problems? Where do you have opportunities? Where is there a superpower that's kind of beneath the surface? That's what I love most about OKRs. They are less so, but also a communication framework, an alignment framework, and a delivery framework. But I really like to look at how they enable organizational learning. I think that's really powerful. So finally, I'll just leave you with this this quote from G.K. Chesterton, who said, "A thing worth doing is worth doing badly." And I like this one, especially working in government and with people who have a very high standard, because they always sort of say, well, "What do you mean it's worth doing badly?" No, we're not going to do it badly. But what I love about it is it says, it's okay to take the space to try it and to not be very good at it yet, but have enough energy, enough enthusiasm, enough dedication to keep getting better and progressing with it, and you will get better. So that's really, really critical. So I'd like to encourage you to really keep going with that. And finally, I'll just say thank you very much. Dziękuję. I hope I've got that right. And Slava Ukraine. So thank you so much. I'm going to open the floor up now, I think, to questions. I don't know what we have on the chat, but I hope that was helpful. If there are things where we went too quickly, we can come back and cover that. Why don't we, let's see if there's things in the chat.
Yeah, let's start from the chat, Peter. And
Okay, good.
колеги, пишіть в чат, або усно можете задавати питання.
Yeah, I'll just start at the top here. Question to Peter. Based on your experience, how many OKR explanations webinar need to provide OKR enthusiasts in a strong matrix organization comparing to balanced matrix or project type of organization? That's interesting. Let me make sure I understand this one, and feel free to elaborate if you want. But so how many training sessions do we need to create a community of practice, or to in a strong matrix organization comparing to balanced matrix?
Юля, please clarify your question, Юля. Юля хотіла уточнити своє питання.
Yes, hello, Peter.
Hello.
You told us about your project management experience, and you know about strong matrix organization, balanced organization, and project type of organization.
Yes.
Yes, and you know how to provide all the solutions, all the establishment rules in strong matrix organization. Do you remember that type of organization?
Well, so
When every feed going from the top and bottom
Right.
doesn't have any any chance to change anything in this
So when it's more top
kind
down.
of solution. Yes,
I
I
see.
mean that, because all of this provide from 10 5 of in for our country is more than 30 years of this strong based matrix organization. And if we speak about the government and only this type of organization can be exists, provide our constitution, provide a lot of rules and best of our how to say habits of to work. And
Yes.
that's
Julia,
why
you choose speaking language Ukrainian, so
That's
no
okay.
one except Peter can understand you.
That's okay. I mean, what I'm understanding, what I heard is, how does this work in an organization where it's very top down, coming from the top and pushing down into the organization? Is that right? Do I have
yes,
that?
you're right.
So
And
that's a
we
great
speak
question.
about the engage if you would like to engage the top of sponsorship, because without engaging the top of sponsorship and never be successful in the end, any project, any transformation is cannot be impossible. That's why I ask you how to switch this mindset from the strong metrics organization from top sponsorship in the country, like government type of the companies. No, how many explanations and no, because they need for example, in your experience, maybe you you invested, for example, year or 24 months or
Yes.
36 months. How, in your experience, based on your practice with BBC, with GDS, with government, what is your advice for that?
That's a great question. Yeah, that's a huge question. Thank you so much, Julia. I think so. There are two parts to it. One is how you change the shape of an organization to begin with, and the second is how you introduce OKRs into that environment. And I put them in that order deliberately because I think first you do need to have an organization that encourages a bit more bottom-up kind of contribution. The best way I know to do that is to transition into more of a service model. So you have cross-functional teams where they can have more ownership of an entire product, an entire service, an entire experience from end to end. If you are in an environment, if you are in an environment where everything is pushed from the top down, where everything is handed to you to do, and all you get are, if you get orders of activities to do, then OKRs will not really work. But if you're given outcomes to try to achieve, then OKRs can work. Because if someone else is deciding how you're spending your time every day, then you don't have very much control. You don't have a lot of decisions to make. You just need to show up and work. But if someone is saying, hey, hey, Peter, I think it would be really interesting if we could climb to the top of that mountain. Or I think it would be really interesting if you could build, a drone that can fly at the speed of sound. How are you going to go and do that? And so I would say for leaders, it's important to really inspire their people with these kinds of uh, impacts that you want to have, these endpoints, and then set them free and say, you go and figure out how you're going to do that. So it does require a bit of a shift in the organization. So instead of telling someone what to do, you're saying, here's where I would like to see us go. We're inspiring them with the vision. There's someone who I owe a lot of my learning to is a man named Peter Senge, or Senge, Senge. I'll put it here in the chat. And he is kind of the godfather of systems thinking, and he wrote a great book called The Fifth Discipline. But he talks a lot about how you inspire people through the vision that you create for them, and that's a very natural way of getting OKRs to work much better. So I would say that's a more philosophical way of thinking about it. In practical terms, once you have that organization, it takes, I would say, at least 4 quarters to really start to see some of the patterns and the habits of OKRs. So it is a slow process. If you can give it even 2 years, that's even better. But that was, I think, one of the other mistakes that was made in my work is that it was always a bit shorter than that. It was never quite long enough to properly bed in.
You
I
mean
hope that
you mean don't expect quick results?
Yeah, that's a better way of saying it. Yes, exactly. So expect it to take time and expect to have to stay with it for a bit. So thank
And
you.
how many iterations do you think need some organizations that have more than 30 years of this kind of mindset with from top to the
Well,
bottom?
I wouldn't try to do the whole organization at one time, but I would find a small part of the organization. I would find, one team and then 5 teams and then 10 teams, and I would build it up slowly. I think you're already doing this, but build it up
No,
slowly.
then sometimes in the beginning you have a lot of excitement, a lot of involvement to the zombie project, but for a while we have some your processes go down, and you need to restart this project of implementation for new methodology because it is not a failure. It is the such approach to succeed the switching of the mindset. That's why I'm asking from your experience. Maybe you know some flex or some understanding when that it is this time is ready to repeat the implementation.
You mean identifying when they're ready to
Yeah, no,
do
I
it
speak
again?
about the change management, and if organization is not ready to
Yes.
change, to transform, you have to prepare them to the change because it is the biggest problem for us. We would like to have quick results in the short time amount of time, but we need to understand what we have to transform the expectations, we respond the mindset, we have to transform their readiness to accept new knowledge, new competence, new mindset. And that's why we have to understand what are the flags.
Julia, we have five questions in the chat and 2 hands here. So please.
It's a very good point.
Yeah, and
it's a very
then
good
we
point.
will.
Unfortunately, it's difficult. Yeah, it takes a lot of time, but I would say, being able to start small and look for those opportunities and make sure that you're only building on success is the other thing, because you can't build on failure. So find those areas where something is giving you more traction and do more of that. And celebrate those things. But yeah, there's people, there's processes, there's tools, there's technology, organizational structures, and then OKRs are just one sort of component within that. But that's another reason why I try to find the teams that are ready for OKRs, who are sort of asking for a new way of communicating and talking about this. But I'd be happy to talk more with you about that later after the session as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, Peter, take a question from people who raised hands and then from the chat. First, from the
who should we go to next then?
And then Margot. Alexander and Margot.
Yes, Alexander.
Yeah, Peter, thank you for this opportunity to ask you questions. Like I have two small one actually, but maybe deep in in expertise. Like first one is what is according to your experience the main differences between working like with businesses like with public and the government. So like key maybe differentiators or key like approaches. How do you approach one or another?
Great. That's a great question. Thank you for that. I see Mr. Markov has put that in as well. So thank you.
Oh yeah,
Someone
is in the chat.
It's a good question. So I think one of the bigger questions I think in the private sector, I think you are more likely to get immediate feedback on what you're working on, and you are more likely to have to sort of sink or swim, as they say, right? You have to figure things out quickly, or your organization will not exist anymore. You will be out of business. So I think that's actually very helpful. It's wonderful to get that kind of direct feedback that you get in the public sector, where you make a small change to your product or service, and immediately people say this is great or this is terrible. So it gives you a lot more steer. In the public sector, in government, it's a little bit more, everything takes a little bit longer. It's a bit slower. You're a little more removed from the day-to-day lives of citizens. Sometimes, not always. I think, a lot of governments, the UK government is doing a good job, I think, of getting closer to what citizens really care about, what they want to do. I mean, it depends who you ask and in what department, but that's a big difference that I see. Most government departments, sadly, you can you can miss the mark and still get funding for next year. And I sometimes also see, there's a history of in some teams, I don't want to name any names, but there can be resistance to adopting OKRs because suddenly now you have a very clear black and white way to evaluate what's going on. So it's easier to kind of hide behind slightly woollier language, less defined language. So I do sometimes see that in teams. But I think it's really that customer feedback and the urgency of it as well. Which, I mean, in your current situation, you probably are feeling plenty of urgency. So maybe you're acting more like a huge startup right now. I don't know, but
it feels like it each day. Thank you very much. And like the second question is, you've mentioned the most complex group to facilitate, like the top managers, C-level, right, who are more in charge of the whole functions. Like maybe you have some like 2 to 3 advices how to facilitate this group, because I'm facilitating a lot.
Okay, good.
I'm always open for expertise.
Yeah, I'd like to ask you as well then, but I think it's difficult, and it's not that senior leaders are being difficult. They're not trying to resist or anything, but when you're at the top of an organization, you have a longer vision. You can see further into what's possible and where you might want to go. And you're also representing a huge number of initiatives and activities and other outcomes. So I think, being compassionate to them first is really the best advice I can give you, to sort of come in and recognize the enormous pressure that they are under, recognize the enormous job that they have to do, and say, would you like to think about a way to streamline this? Can we come up with a really clean way to describe what it is that you are most focused on right now? And sometimes I ask them things like, what's keeping you awake at night? What are you going to be celebrating in a year's time? One of my favorite tricks that I use with all my teams, but it's very useful with senior leaders too, is to say, okay, you might have a board of advisors somewhere, but I want you to imagine that you have your personal board of advisors. These are people, maybe members of your family or celebrities or great thinkers who are alive or dead maybe, but people that you feel like you could rely on to give you good advice. Now imagine, what would they tell you to do? What would they tell you
that's nice.
to do with the current situation? And then you can have them imagine, say, all right, it's 12 months from now, everything has gone perfectly. What are we celebrating? What is the first, when you're making your toast at the party and you're celebrating, what is the first thing you want to say that's really gone well? And that often helps people to get into a little more of a concrete mindset. But honestly, that's still talking about the individual. You have to bring the whole group into that conversation, which is the hard part, because they ultimately have to work together to own those outcomes, or else they can't set OKRs. Sometimes what I do as well is I let them I allow them to set OKRs that are kind of individual in nature, and then we look around the room and we realize, because we can see lots of different OKRs that aren't overlapping, and we recognize that we don't have a single set of OKRs, we have many individual OKRs. And so when they can see that, sometimes that helps as well.
Thanks a lot.
Great question. What else do we have? We have a couple in the chat. We have Margot has a hand up.
Let's ask Margot. Margot, you have a question, and then we will jump to a chat.
Yeah, thank you so much, Peter, for the terrific section. I actually had a small comment on what Julia shared about the companies who are very traditional and organizations that are very traditional. I have an example from my previous experience. I had a customer from Brazil, from a very traditional industry, from agriculture, and they were implementing OKRs. And when they showed me them for review, I was thinking that they are doing this totally wrong. This is not outcome oriented. This is like looks like a task list. But then what the transformation manager shared is that the people are very much concerned about any sort of metrics. They are, there is some fear within organizations. So they were doing a gentle way. So they were not saying that we're implementing OKRs. So for the first year, they started creating goals for every team without specific metrics, just generic goals. And people had to tie their work to these goals. So that wasn't OKRs, but that was like a baby step for them to understand, like that you need to think about the end goal. And then after the year, they started slowly introducing the metrics, because what often scare people in OKRs is the specific number. When you put a number to this is super scary. And like when you can do it like a little bit in a gentler way, it's not a textbook, it's not the perfect way, but sometimes it's better than nothing. So
I like that. Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much for sharing that. I think that's a perfect example of adapting the framework a little bit. It's not quite as powerful maybe, but it also is a stepping stone. It
baby
gets
step,
a baby step to get you there. So yeah, sort of objectives and tasks maybe, but without the key results or without the numbers for a while. I like that. Thank you for sharing that. Love it. Good.
Thank you for the
Let's see.
session.
Oh, you're very welcome. I should mention I have probably another 10 or 15. Well, I have a few minutes to look at the chat. If you need to leave for any reason, that's okay. I won't be offended if you have to go, but you're also very welcome to stay and join the conversation.
To answer all questions from the chat, maybe make it shorter to answer all questions.
Yeah, let's see what I can get through here. I'll try to do each one of these. We'll do a sort of speed round here, lightning round. So from Vlad, to what extent do ministerial OKRs reflect political priorities versus institutional mandates? That's a complicated, interesting question. And there's a follow-up. I see a pattern in Ukraine when a system without a dedicated delivery unit or dedicated team that keeps larger picture, ministerial OKRs systematically drift toward political visibility of work like outputs rather than structural policy outcomes within a couple of quarters. Wow, that's very interesting. And I think you're right. And that also does happen everywhere, right? Because if you think about it, ministers, their job, they owe their job to what they can demonstrate, right? So in every country, and no different here, ministers want a good news story. They want something they can stand up and say, I've delivered this for people. And so, and especially because ministers are usually less familiar with things like OKRs, they understand outcomes, but they often want to point to a feature, an application, a service, something that exists today that didn't exist yesterday. So they do tend to be much more binary, and they look at, we launched this thing, or this service is now live, or this thing has happened. When that happens, I try to remind them that, I'm trying to think if I don't think I've talked to any ministers about OKRs directly, actually. But the people who are talking to the ministers, we say, all right, remember that we need evidence, right? Remember that if we want a good news story, we have to back that up with numbers. We have to back it up with things that have actually happened. So I think there is a pattern for bringing them into that, but it is a very natural kind of shift towards kind of political visibility. Absolutely. So yeah, I think let's keep talking about that. Thank you again for the question about difference between public and private sectors. We've kind of covered that. I think, the sense of urgency, the feedback that you get is really valuable. I'm going to go on to another question, maybe come back to that one. I'm kind of skipping everything that's not in English, but here's one from Oksana saying, hello, I work in the Lviv region, regional state administration, 21 structural divisions. We have just started a pilot project. Great, 6 departments invited to participate. Okay, will OKR be successful for all departments, or will it bring chaos? And how does it work in local government? I think if you try to do it too quickly, it will be chaos, yes. So my advice or my invitation to you is to develop a good sense of what is working and what is not working, and make sure that you are careful about how quickly you're moving. And I would involve the rest of your stakeholders in that decision. So maybe you can come up with some OKRs about your OKR adoption. Maybe you can ask people how useful they are or how happy they are with OKRs and that sort of thing. And try to be very honest and say, okay, make sure you're working at a sustainable pace, essentially, because what you don't want is you don't want to have, it's like if you go skiing and you have 500 people who have never skied before and they're all on the same beginner's ski slope, it's chaos. But if you have a few people at a time going down, in a school, it's much easier. Also, if you can keep the people who are learning kind of in one part of the organization where they get a lot of support, it's safe, they can't hurt anybody, then gradually they go off and they train other people. But I think training the trainers is the best thing too, is teaching them to be your coaches, your advocates, so that the first cohort of people that you train, then they can go off and help you to form the rest of that community. That's usually how I try to structure it. I hope that helps. Let's do another one here. And then, yeah, we'll see if we run out of questions, we can do a bit more follow-up. How would you approach a situation where a leader expects teams to propose ambitious changes and ideas through their OKRs, and teams are given the autonomy to define their own OKRs, but the level of ambition consistently fails to meet the leader's expectations? Teams believe their objectives are ambitious, yeah, but the leader disagrees. At the same time, the leader is unable to articulate or cascade specific expected outcomes. What ambitious enough would look like? Yeah, how can alignment be achieved? Yeah, that's a great question as well. And that does come up a lot. I think this comes back to the idea of transparency and psychological safety, because what you really want is to be able to, as a team, go to that leader and say, here is the most ambitious plan we could come up with. And then you kind of want that leader to be able to look at it and say, okay, thank you. I notice you're trying to move this number from a 2 to a 10. I was hoping it would be a 15, or I was hoping this number would go to 35, whatever. But now you're having a more material conversation about where you actually want things to land. And you can go back and forth and push back on it a little. So I think this is also why it's so important for your key results to have numbers in them, so that you have an actual outcome and your leader can look at that and say, that's okay. Or your leader can say, no, we have to go, much, much higher. Or the leader might say, I see you're working in this area. That's not what I want. And then as a team, you can say, where should we be working? Where do you want us to work? And you can say, no, I want you to work in this area instead, or I want you to achieve this specific goal. This is where it's useful if a team can become comfortable with OKRs before the leaders. And that's a strategy that will work, is to start with the teams. Even if the leaders are not ready for OKRs or they're not thinking in that way, the teams can still use OKRs to communicate upwards. And then eventually you're kind of letting the teams train the leaders a little bit to do that. And that should help the leaders to also become more and more explicit in their goals. But again, this is a tricky one. You have to be very sensitive about it and careful. Ivan asks, incorporating OKRs is the process, and usually processes are not something you could implement overnight. No, that's true. That's more even about changing the culture. That's a really nice observation. Absolutely. Yeah, OKRs really are the natural result of a culture that values measurability, that values transparency, that values a relentless focus on impact and outcomes. They don't create that culture. They can help, but it's better if you can kind of start from that culture. Yeah, and that does take a lot of time. But again, if you can find 1 or 2 teams who have that culture, you can try to expand the culture to the rest of the organization. So, thank you. Good question, or good comment. Let's see, developing and implementing an OKR system requires significant time and organizational effort. Yes, it does, based on experience. Do the benefits justify these investments? That's a very good question. How do you ensure the system remains sustainable after a change in leadership rather than being abandoned or substantially revised by a new head of the organization? Yes, well, that question is exactly the scenario that has happened to me several times now. So I don't know if I know the answer yet, but I believe it comes to building enough benefit for the people in the system that they want to maintain it, right? Building enough that they see the value, so they will continue to invest what is required. The other thing is you want to help organizations to understand all the things they can stop doing. So when you introduce OKRs in a very useful, practical way, there's a lot of other reporting that you can stop doing. There's a lot of other communication that you can eventually stop doing, because the OKRs should be able to function as the main indicator of how things are going. Not always, and you still need KPIs and things, but I like to use OKRs to carve out more space. Good. Alexander,
Peter,
so you have a hand up. Yeah.
I want to jump deeper in this question, because and I will switch to Ukrainian. I hope that the translation will be okay.
Okay, we'll try.
Хочу заглибитись в це питання. Чому? Тому що ми знаємо, що є великі і успішні компанії, які вже за оцінкою є трильйонними компаніями. Чому? Тому що вони упродовж років і десятиліть використовують OKR. Це і приклад Apple, і приклад Мети, і приклад Google. Фактично всі компанії, які є найбільшими у світі, працюють за цією методологією. І якимсь чином їм вдалося зробити роботу за OKR десятилітньою. Змінялись керівники, але все одно вони продовжували працювати за цією методологією і ставати найуспішнішими організаціями в цьому світі. Що ми бачили тут в Україні, і це те, про що говориш ти, що у державних організаціях, на жаль, ці системи будувались і потім руйнувались. І ми це бачили тут в Україні на прикладі державних агенцій і деяких міністерств. Як забезпечити таку сталість для довгострокового успіху? Які уроки ми можемо вивчити в приватному секторі, в першу чергу в тих компаніях, де ти працював, які продовжують використовувати упродовж багатьох років і десятиліть OKR для того, щоб доставляти більшу цінність для громадян, щоб держави в світі ставали ефективнішими, щоб вони держави між собою могли формувати, наприклад, спільні цілі. Тобто досвід приватного сектору довгострокового успіху OKR-систем, який ми можемо екстраполювати використати в державному секторі.
So I think I got most of that. This is the million-dollar question. I think this is a very important question. And I think from what I've seen, I have a few observations. One is you absolutely must have somebody who is driving OKRs, who from the top, who cares about OKRs, wants to see them, is constantly asking about them and ensuring that people have them and are using them. This is something, I don't know if you've seen the video that Rick Cloud did years and years ago from Google when he discovered OKRs from coming in from Blogger. But he said that there's a person who is just sort of constantly chasing everyone for their OKRs and saying, these teams have not done their OKRs, do it now. And that's a little bit blunt, but I think you almost need that level of saying, you, and you need OKRs. If you don't have OKRs, I can't give you any money, right? I cannot fund you to do random stuff. And that's kind of the attitude that you need from the top of the organization, right? To say, if you don't give me OKRs, I don't give you money. And if you give me OKRs and you fail to hit them, that might be okay, right? I might still give you money. I might give you more money because of how ambitious you've been and the lessons you've learned and the journey you've been on. But that needs to be the fundamental. And this, I think, is also where I've maybe failed a bit, or where OKRs have failed, is that a lot of senior leaders don't see the urgency and the power of that perspective around OKRs. They see, oh, it's another management thing. Whereas what we need to show senior leaders is this is everything, right? Everything you're doing as an organization should distill and should point to these OKRs. So every conversation you have, Steve Jobs was famous for annoying people because he would get into the elevator in the lift with them, and he would turn and say, what are you working on? How is it going? And what he really wanted, what he was getting into was what are you building? Why are you building it? How is it going? Are you going to have the kind of impact that we want to have as a company? And I think that's the kind of attitude, that's the kind of conversation that OKRs should fuel everywhere in the organization. So, should we invest in this particular area? Should we build this thing? Are we being successful here? Should we augment this team? Should we still have this team? Those are all conversations that should be fueled through OKRs, I think. But again, that's difficult. And as a coach, you have to be there every time a senior leader says, how's that project going? I like to sort of step in and say, no, it's not about the project, it's about the impact. You can ask about the impact. Maybe the project is a way of delivering the impact, but the first question is, are you confident that you're going to achieve this key result? And then they might start telling you about why the project is delayed or why, this is happening or whatever. But the first question is, are we going to achieve this key result? Is this number going to go from 5 to 20? Or is it going to arrive at 16? And this is something you can do with the check-ins as well, is to say, don't just give us a report, but give us your guess, your estimate of where the numbers will land, right? So where each of your key results will be. I think this will be a 5, this will be a 2, this will be a 3, being adventurous and and using those measurable outcomes as a location where you think you will end up, that kind of thing. But yeah, I think it's that you have to really drive it hard from the top, and you have to use it as the center of every conversation, because otherwise, this is the thing: if no one is asking a team about their OKRs, the team says, why do I bother having OKRs? You know, I should just work on my project, and then I can say, oh, the project failed, or you know, we did some stuff. We've been very busy. This is a problem I also see in a lot of organizations is people say, well, we are very active. You know, we're doing a lot of different things, but the problem is they're not adding up to one sort of outcome. So yeah, again, no easy answer, but I hope that helps.
Yeah, Peter, I will have two more short questions at the final stage of our discussion.
All right, let's do it.
Question in the chat.
Oh, sorry, two more from the chat. Okay. Let's see. There's one in Ukrainian. Oh, that's from you. Okay. Thank you for the presentation. What is the best approach for integrating process-oriented teams into higher level OKRs? That's a very good question. I think it depends what we mean by process-oriented. If it means that they always follow the same process, all right, it's a bit loud out there. If you have a team that is always following the same process and they don't have a lot of
correct.
Yeah, great.
So like legal, HR, you know, finance, administrative functions, and it's hard to find what are their key results and objectives for them.
That's true. There is let me see if I can find, a long time ago, I wrote a blog post about this one. But yeah, in some of those more operational groups, you're not going to change the day-to-day work as much, right? They still have to make sure that people get paid. We still have to respond to legal challenges. You know, those things don't go away. But you can use OKRs to look at how successfully you're responding to those things. So one example, again, at the BBC, I was working with a team who was in their operations department, and they were responsible for, you know, getting the broadcast operations. So making sure that you can watch the BBC from the most remote corners of Scotland, for example. And they struggled with OKRs. They said, look, we don't know if in the next 3 hours someone is going to cut through a cable. So how can we predict what we will do in the next 3 months? You know, and same with HR and legal. We don't know what kinds of things are going to come in. So there are two things that you can do is for the repeatable processes, right? There are deterministic pieces of work that are always kind of you know they're coming and you know you always have to do them. How can you optimize those? So instead of it taking, you know, 6 hours to run payroll for a whole organization, can you pay everybody in 20 minutes? And instead of having 80% accuracy, can you get to 95% accuracy? You know, so you can put some key results around the activities that they're already doing, which is a nice way to do it. The other thing for the unpredictable activities, you can say, okay, we don't know when we're going to have some kind of an outage. We don't know when we're going to encounter a bug in our software, but can we get faster at triaging and identifying those bugs? Can we make decisions more quickly? Can we share that information with a larger number of people in less time? So, you know, it's kind of, we know they're still in a very operational kind of space, but we can make small improvements to how they operate. The other thing I would say is if you know that 100% of your time is spent operating in a certain way and you have no ability to change that, then don't use OKRs. They will be very frustrating because you won't be able to innovate and make any changes. If you have maybe 5% of your budget or 10% of your time that you could use to make some innovation, then just set OKRs around that, right? If someone else tells you what to do 80% of the time, but for 20% of your time, that's yours, use OKRs in that 20% where you can make a difference. And then hopefully the energy you put there will impact the other 80%, right? Something you might know from like the Google SRE, the site reliability engineering culture. They spend 50% of their time fighting fires and solving emergencies. And they spend the other 50% of their time eliminating the first 50%, right? Eliminating the manual work, the toil that they have to do because it's not automated yet, or they haven't found a way to make that better. So for those kinds of teams, yeah, I would also do them last is the other thing. Don't push them into OKRs until you already have a good culture of OKRs in the organization. That's great. Thank you. Let's see. We've got let's see, Anna, you posted a thing there in Ukraine. Oh, question from the chat on the link. Oh, thank you for collecting all those in the document. Good. Alexander, did you have one or two more things before we close then? Or any other questions?
Yeah. Peter, first I will do it in Ukrainian for everyone to understand correctly what I am asking. Кожна людина і кожна організація хоче досягнути успіху. І OKR – це про те, як зрозуміти взагалі, як виглядає ваш успіх, тобто ваша ціль, і як виміряти, чи ви успішний чи ні. І для людини, і для організації дуже зрозуміла вимірювальна рамка, фреймворк. Чому? Як зробити так, щоб кожен зрозумів, міг якісно формулювати, зрозумів, що це потрібно йому, кожна організація, кожна людина, на твій погляд, якісно сформулювати свій намір і в тому числі ключові результати вимірювання цього наміру. Бо це ж очевидно, що кожен досягнути успіху хоче, але не кожен має запит і хоче зрозуміти, як його виміряти. Це перше питання. Тобто, як дати кожному зрозуміти власні цілі і сформулювати їх. І друге питання я потім задам. Давай це. Воно буде дуже коротке наступне.
Okay. I should read the caption back to you. So actually, Alexander, why don't you try it in English as well then? Because I saw you said everyone wants to be successful, every individual, every company. And
it's in the nature of everyone to want success. And why it's not in nature to measure success, to understand for yourself if you're successful or no. How to convince everyone to measure success and to formulate success in a measurement.
Ooh, this is a very philosophical sort of question, I think, and it gets to, I don't know, I think as human beings, we have to be very careful because we like to construct our own realities, and there are moments where we are reading reality correctly and where we are not, right? And, you know, this is almost a sort of Buddhist kind of idea that, you know, the best thing you can do with OKRs is to have a clear, accurate view of reality, right? To develop that deep sort of consciousness so that you know as an organization, this is where we have impact and leverage. This is where we don't. If I go, you know, if I start running to the east, I'm never going to see a sunset, right? No matter how fast I go. But that's science. But you need to understand the science of planetary motion and things to appreciate that. So I think OKRs are a tool for us to develop our consciousness. Really, it sounds a little bit out there, a bit fancy, but and they help organizations to do that as well. But I also think you're making a good point about human nature, that sometimes it's easier for us to say, oh, well, this didn't happen, but I didn't really want to do it anyway, or to be able to, you know, spin the thing to say, oh yeah, that was okay, that was good enough, you know, I actually was successful, and this is why I think some organizations, some people push back on OKRs a little bit, because it forces you to be very precise about how you measure success, and it prevents you from being able to say, yeah, you know, you can still be satisfied if you reach 82% of a goal, but at least you know that it was 82%. You know, you can't lie to yourself and say that it was 100%. So I think there's something around human nature and around psychological safety and around fear. You know, if we believe that failure is not an option, or that we will be punished for not delivering, then we're going to bend reality until we can try to fool ourselves into saying that we were successful even if we weren't, for example. So I do think there's something in human nature where we are not always completely truthful with ourselves. I know I do it myself. I'm guilty of this like anybody. But when I catch myself, then I say, oh, you know what? Maybe I'm not telling the truth to myself. Maybe I'm not really being clear here. So that's why I think that's a journey that we have to go on. Yeah. So.
Yeah, Peter, and the final from me. I will ask it in Ukrainian, and if you will not understand, I will jump in English.
Okay.
Місія OKR UA – перетворити Україну, об'єднати ініціативних лідерів спільною практикою OKR. І для того, щоб перетворити Україну на країну з найкращим управлінням у світі. Тому ми сподіваємося залучити тебе до роботи в якійсь з українських організацій, бізнесових або державних. Це перше. А друге, для того, щоб перетворити OKR на рух і Україну на країну з найкращим управлінням в світі, ми хочемо залучити всіх найкращих спеціалістів з OKR до роботи з українськими організаціями і інституціями і залучити до спільноти OKR UA, поспілкуватись з ними. Кого з найкращих практиків OKR в світі ти би рекомендував запросити до OKR UA, до нашого спілкування Джон Дора, Бена Ламорта і Пола Нівена. Ми з ними спілкувались, обов'язково вони сказали, ми їх обов'язково залучимо до спільноти. Кого ще?
Okay, let's try that one in English because I don't think I recognized a few names like John Doerr and Ben Lamort.
Yeah, we already asked John Doerr, Paul Niven, Ben Lamort. I have communicated with them, and they will join a community and form the meeting with community. Who else? Because we want to make Ukraine. We want to make OKRs as a government management framework for Ukraine and to share it with other countries to deliver better results for citizens and to align goals between different agencies in Ukraine and between countries. So we want to be a changing point forward to build alignment between government agencies, between countries, and to build a peaceful and world without the war. We believe in it as a movement. So who else we can ask to join a meeting with our community?
Well, that's a great question and a wonderful ambition, and I think certainly John Doerr would be excited to be involved in that in his organization. I think the only other person who immediately comes to mind is probably Christina Watke, because she was very much my mentor. So I would reach out to her and see if she can be part of that. I think it's interesting because in some places, I think OKRs are having a bit of a moment like what happened with agile ways of working, where a lot of organizations are trying to adopt them and having kind of mixed results and saying, oh, it doesn't work. But I think the core offering of OKRs is still so strong. It's just kind of finding that way to really embrace and implement them really honestly and completely. So certainly the people you mentioned and Christina Watke, I think would be an amazing addition to that. I'll have a think about who else we should invite, but I love that idea. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter.
Well,
I think we're out of the time.
I think so, yeah. So I'll just say a huge thank you. Wonderful to have everybody on here. I should say it's always fun to kind of I wonder if we could do like a class photo or something with everybody who doesn't mind having their picture taken or something. And if you would rather not, then turn your camera off or you can drop off. But if you don't mind being in a little class photo, turn your camera on for a minute and we'll take a screenshot.
Вімкніть камери, зробимо загальне фото.
If you like. It's nice to see everyone smiling, learning about OKRs. Oh, we should have done this from the beginning. It's nice to see everyone. So, good stuff. All right, I will count to 3, which I have to do in English.
Юля, включи камеру.
1, 2, 3. All right, good. Actually, I'll do one more in case anybody was blinking. Fantastic. Thank you so much, everyone. It's wonderful to see you here and keep up the good work. And please let me know how you get on, and maybe I'll join one of your future discussions as well. That would be great. So,
Thank you, Peter.
Thank you, Alexander.
It's amazing.
Thank you for organizing and inviting me.
Thanks.
Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.